Hey guys, this is going to be your Mythic Kyveza positional guide. I'm going to go over the Mythic changes real quick. We will be starting with 5 portals and shades that spawn through the entire fight. That doesn't change, unlike normal and heroic where it slowly gets more portals. We get 5 right off the bat. Just like normal and heroic, there's 2 phases. One that's a shade phase, one that's a kind of blaze pizza phase is what I'm calling it. And it repeats 3 times. The other main mythic mechanic here is that some of the shades will have a mask debuff on them, and I'll explain that a little bit in a moment. And this is tuned to hurt pretty bad. We're going to be 5 healing it. Really, if everyone lives to the end of the fight, we should kill it, especially with our eye levels and DPS at this time. And this is a 100% positioning fight, so being able to pay attention, knowing exactly where you're supposed to be standing, at all times is going to be critical for us killing this boss. All right, so let's talk about the mythic mechanic with the shades and masks debuffs. If you see in the top middle there's a screenshot of what the mask shade will look like. They'll have a red outline as opposed to a blue outline. When they target you, you still get a blue beam. It doesn't look red, it's still blue, so you have to look at your ad to know which debuff you have. Although this isn't important for any DPS, the only people that need to pay attention to where the actual masked shades are the tanks. The tanks have a very critical role in removing these mask debuffs throughout the fight, which I'll talk about in a moment. So in the first phase, the first time we see that first phase, we have 3 masked shades, and the idea there is we need to remove all 3 masks by having them dash through the boss. If you remove more than 2, so if you remove 3 or more masks at a time, the boss gets a permanent damage amp. If you leave any shades up, the boss will kill us when she gets to the Blaze Pizza phase. So we have to remove all the shades before she gets to the Blaze Pizza phase. Essentially, it's a kind of a little bit of a math problem, right? So the first time we see the shades, the tanks are going to remove either 2 debuffs first and then 1 debuff to remove all 3, or 1 and 2. The second time we see the shades, there's going to be 4. So we do 2 and 2, and the third time we see shades, there's going to be 5 with the debuff, and so we'll do 2 and 2, and leave. We'll do 2 and 3, and she'll get a damage amp for the rest of the fight with that last mass debuff being cleared 3 at a time. That's at the end of the fight. All right, so we'll talk about the shade phase and the positioning here. It's the exact same thing every single time. The spell sequence is the initial portal placement. We'll get the daggers like the lines, as well as the balls of the people that got targeted by portals. We're going to have a dash. We're going to have dodgeballs and lines. We're going to have another dash, dodgeball and lines. Again, tanks are responsible for moving the boss to get in the right positioning for the mask removal. So let's kind of talk about how that looks. So we're going to walk through the initial phase 1 positioning, just to kind of give you a top-down view of what it actually looks like. So I'm going to have markers set up like this. It's not super critical that we keep X clear at all times, because it's going to change. This is just for the sake of having our tanks be a little more consistent, at least at the beginning of each phase. So 5 people are going to get targeted by portals, and they're going to go stand on the inner part of these yellow triangles I've outlined here. You can kind of see the triangles on the ground. So the 5 people are going to go stack on those inner triangles there, and they're going to place the portals. And so again, you can see the little triangle here. You want to be on the inner side of that. After placing the portal, you're going to get the debuff just like every other difficulty, and you're going to rotate clockwise out and stand on a very specific positioning here. And you'll kind of notice a little diamond pattern on the ground floor there. You want to stand on the outer kind of angle there. And I'll kind of highlight here. You can kind of see where the triangles are on the floor and where you're supposed to be standing. And I can do a little close-up for you so you can see the pattern on the floor and kind of outline where you're supposed to be standing. And this is for the debuff. And you're basically going to stand there and wait for the portals to pull you in. You don't have to move. The portals should pull you in equally into the center. And the balls will go off automatically. If we do it right, the center hexagon where the tank and the boss are now should be the safe place. So tanks are going to pull them out for the last 6th portal, going to place the portal, and then all the things are going to happen. We're going to get sucked in, balls are going to get shot off, lines are going to happen. Again, the safe place is going to be that inner hexagon. And at this point, it's just dodging the lines, continuously doing damage to the boss. And that's the first portal placement with the first dodgeball and lines. So now we get the shade spawning. And you can see in the diagram, we're going to start with 3 the first time we see this phase. The next time we see this phase, there's going to be 4. And then the last phase, there's going to be 5. So again, this is heavy emphasis on tank positioning here. And I'll show you what that kind of looks like. So in the first phase, since we have 3 adds, the idea here is we get 2 dashes altogether. We want to remove 2 the first time and 1 the second, or 1 the first time and 2 the second time. It doesn't necessarily matter, just whatever the tanks can do. In the second and third time we see this phase, it's going to be 2, 2, and then 2, 3, which I'll talk about that in a moment. So you can kind of see the mass adds here highlighted in red. We're going to get lines, and it's super important here with the lines for all the raiders, DPS and healers, non-tanks, that you pay attention what ad is targeting you. So what you're going to do is say you get targeted by this ad here. You're going to count 2 markers clockwise and stand on that marker exactly. So in this case, if this ad here that targets you sort of near a triangle, you're going to count 1, 2, and that's where you're going to stand. You're going to go stand on star if you get targeted by that ad. So if you get targeted by the ad over here on purple, you're going to count 1, 2, and you're going to go stand on X. So it's pretty simple, but you need to pay attention on what ad is targeting you, count 2 markers clockwise, and stack on that second marker. And so let's see what that looks like here. So you're going to go stack. You can kind of see the direction of the dashes now. And the idea here is we're doing 2 things. One, we're creating symmetry with where the portals are going to open up again by pushing them out to a specific location. And we're creating a bunch of intersections of where these ads are actually crossing. And so this is information for the tanks. You can kind of see here, tanks, that there are a few different positions that you can go to remove either 1 or 2 debuffs. You can either go here to remove 2 debuffs, here to remove 1 debuff, or down here to remove 1 debuff. If you go to this crossover, we will wipe because it will remove 0 debuffs, and we don't want that. In this first phase, we want to remove either 1 or 2. So in this instance, I have an example that you're going to position the boss there in the intersection of 1 mass debuff, and the ads are going to dash across. So this ad here that dashed through the boss will now have its mass debuff removed, and the boss will have a temporary damage amp with the 1 mass going through it, which will fall off shortly. And now you can see symmetry in the room with the ads, and now the tank can then reposition for the 5th portal, again to get us all sucked in. Remember, when you get dashed through, the people that stood on these markers, you will again rotate out to your nearest diamond marker on the outside and wait for your debuff to expire and get pulled into the center of the room. Again, safe place here is going to be inside that hexagon in the center of the room. All right, so now we have 2 masks left, 3 unmasked left. This section is actually really easy on the tanks. Boss is just going to stay in the middle, and what's going to happen is if you get targeted by the lines here, you're going to go to the opposite side on the other side of the ad. So for example, this healer here was targeted by this masked ad. So they will take their line all the way through the room on the other side of this far right ad. They don't want to be on the inside because you will get dashed twice and you'll die. You only want to get dashed once. And the boss stays in the middle. So what's going to happen here is there's going to be a intersection right in the center of the room through the boss, and the boss will get rid of the rest of the mass debuffs. So the tank doesn't have to think about this part. This is just everyone else being in good positions here. And then melee and ranged, what you'll want to be doing is playing in this trapezoid section on the outside during this, because that is where it should be safe, is in these little outer trapezoids. So again, ads are going to dash through. It's going to remove the last two debuffs. Boss will get a temporary damage amp with those because we removed less than 3. And we do the same thing we have been before, which is getting the boss into the empty section, rotating out and getting stacked on that outer diamond edge, waiting for the debuffs to pop off to shoot the balls and the lines, and we all get sucked into the middle. And so that's P1. And again, I want to just go back to this section here, especially for the tanks. I just want to reiterate, in the second time that we get to this phase, there's going to be 4 of these ads. And so we'll need to remove 2 and then another 2. And so it's really important for the tanks to identify exactly where the boss positioning should be to remove all of those debuffs. Okay, so we will fast forward. That is P1 in a nutshell. It's all about execution and positioning. It's actually a really simple fight. It's just executing it a few times over and over again and making sure we do it correctly. Now I'm going to talk about P2. P2, or the Blaze Pizza phase, is literally the same thing as normal and heroic. The only difference here is it's a lot more damage. The wedges, or the little pizza slices that happen, they rotate, I believe, clockwise through the room. And what we're going to do is pre-assign positions here. This is just a mock-up. I'll put in the actual starting roster in raid resources with actual positioning, but the idea here is we want healers spread out to make sure we're healing everyone, and having all the melee as close as possible. Having the Ret Paladins a little bit farther back behind the other melee because they should have a little bit of range, and then having the people with range be way the heck out here. At the end of the Blaze Pizza phase, every single person in the raid gets a line at the exact same time. And so it's very important to prep for that and to dodge. If you get targeted by the actual Blaze line when you're in this phase, just pop a defensive like the first time you ever get targeted. It's a lot of damage that goes out during this phase, and it's just about dodging. I wouldn't worry about boss damage at all for the first few nights that we're pulling this boss. We should just absolutely focus on mechanics first, and the boss will fall over. And that's the entirety of the fight. That's it. So we do this cycle of the Shade phase and the Blaze Pizza phase 3 times, and hopefully the boss is dead. And I hope you enjoy this little jingle that I found on the Raid Leaders Discord that shows you and highlights where you should be stacking. And I'll leave it on that. The markers are incorrect on this one, but you guys get the idea. GG's, everybody.